Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will offer an update on the case of Susan Lorincz. She is the topic of a documentary on Netflix titled The Perfect Neighbor. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Susan Louise Lorincz was born on July 23, 1964, and lived in the state of Florida. She worked in the insurance business for a while. In 2020, Susan rented an apartment in a quadplex in Ocala, Florida. A quadplex is a structure that contains 4 separate housing units. This building was 4,300 square feet. Presumably, Susan's unit would have been 1/4 of this, 1,075 square feet. During her time there, she frequently yelled at children who were playing in a grass-covered field next to her apartment and appeared to believe they were deliberately trying to disturb her. Susan was particularly concerned with some of the children of a neighbor across the street named Ajike Chantel Owens, who went by the name AJ. She was the manager of a local McDonald's restaurant and had 4 children between the ages of 3 and 12, Isaac, Israel, Africa, and Titus. Since January 2021, the police had received at least 10 calls regarding disputes between Susan and AJ. A few examples. In February 2022, Susan alleged that AJ came to her apartment and confronted her about an argument that Susan had with her children. AJ allegedly pulled a no trespassing sign out of the ground and threw it towards Susan, striking Susan in the leg. The police spoke to AJ. She admitted to throwing the sign as she was walking away from Susan, but claimed that she did not throw it toward Susan. Various witnesses indicated the sign did not actually strike Susan. The police left the scene without arresting anyone. On August 10, 2022, the police responded after Susan called. She demanded a cease and desist order citing her right to quiet enjoyment of her property. The police left without doing anything. On December 22, 2022, the police responded after Susan tried to kick children off her property. She claimed the children told her to shut up. The police warned the neighborhood children to leave Susan alone. On March 14, 2023, the police paid a visit to Susan's apartment after she was accused of ramming a gate with her 2018 Nissan Titan pickup truck. It's not exactly clear what happened, but it sounds like she may have driven down a road and a gate somehow became closed behind her. She struck the gate to get off the road. This incident wasn't related to AJ or any of the neighborhood children, but it is still relevant because the defense that Susan invoked. She claimed that she hit the gate after panicking because she had been the victim of horrible offenses in the past. The disposition of this case was not revealed. On April 17, 2023, Susan accused AJ of opening her mailbox. Nothing was missing from the mailbox, and the case was closed. Just 8 days later, on April 25, 2023, Susan accused a child of trying to put his puppy in the bed of her pickup truck. The police recommended that the children stay away from Susan's apartment. And on May 22, 2023, Susan made a police report claiming that she had been the victim of arson and criminal mischief. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On Friday, June 2, 2023, children were once again playing on the field next to the apartment of Susan Lorincz. Frustrated by this behavior, Susan threw roller skates at one of AJ's sons. Susan called 911 at 8:54 p.m. and told the operator, "We got kids trespassing, standing there, leaving all the toys around, just screaming, yelling, just being absolutely obnoxious." She indicated that she threw roller skates over to the other side and claimed that the boy said, "I'm going to beat you up for that." Susan said, "I'm fearing for my life. I'm very scared. I don't like the kids threatening me that they'll beat me up, that they're going to get someone else to kill me. This is just ridiculous. They keep badgering me and badgering me. I'm just sick of these children." The call with 911 ended after 5 minutes at 8:59 p.m. At 9:01 p.m., 2 minutes later, the police received multiple calls from people in Susan's neighborhood who heard a gunshot. Susan called 911 for the second time, saying, "Some woman was screaming and yelling. She was trying to break down my door. I didn't know what to do. I grabbed my gun and I shot at the door, and I thought she was going to kill me." When the police arrived at the apartment of Susan Lorincz, they discovered that A.J. Owens had been shot one time with a pistol chambered in .380 ACP. A.J. was transported to a hospital and pronounced dead at 9:36 p.m. There was a bullet hole in Susan's door, and the police found the weapon used to shoot AJ in her apartment. Susan agreed to be interviewed by the police. Here's what she told them. For the last 2 years, AJ's sons were showing a lack of respect for her peace and privacy. The children were always playing on the grass-covered field outside her apartment. Susan told the boys that they were trespassing, but allegedly, they threatened to kill her. About a year ago, Susan purchased a Remington 380 ACP semi-automatic pistol in order to protect herself from their mother, AJ. On the night of the shooting, Susan said that 2 of AJ's sons were playing on the field next to her apartment. She threw roller skates into the field and told one of the boys to go fetch them. She maintained that she did not throw the roller skates at anyone, rather in the yard, because the children had left items near her apartment. The boys left to inform their mother, AJ, about what happened. AJ walked up to Susan's apartment and started banging on her door. She yelled, "You don't talk to my sons. I'm going to blank and kill you." Susan indicated that AJ was banging so hard the door looked like it was going to fly off its hinges, and a mirror on her wall was shaking. She admitted, however, that AJ never tried to operate the door handle. Fearing for her safety, Susan retrieved her Remington 380 pistol and fired 1 round through her front door. This was a panic response based on Susan's feeling that she was in mortal danger. She fired so that AJ would go away. This round struck and killed AJ. The police interviewed witnesses in the neighborhood. Here's what they learned. The children had permission from the owner of the grass-covered field to play there. Susan had a history of making offensive statements toward the children, including the use of racial slurs and the extension of her middle finger. Everybody in the neighborhood knew Susan was a troublemaker, and people commonly referred to her as a Karen. On the night of the fatal shooting, Susan threw roller skates at one of AJ's sons and allegedly struck him in the foot. The boy went to get his older brother. Susan allegedly swung an umbrella at both of the boys to get them off her property. The boys told their mother, AJ, who went over to Susan's apartment and banged on the door. One of AJ's sons was standing next to his mother when Susan killed her. Witnesses said they never heard AJ threaten to kill anyone when she was standing at Susan's door. The police interviewed Susan for a second time. She admitted to using racial slurs and other derogatory terms against the children and indicated that AJ never actually made any threats during prior confrontations. Susan selected words like reasonable and prudent, which made the police curious. Susan informed them that she had researched information on self-defense on the same day as the second interview and admitted that she may have researched this information in the recent past as well. This includes Florida's Stand Your Ground law. She also admitted that she may have swung the umbrella at the children on the day of the shooting. On Susan's cell phone, the police found video of the children playing outside. It was recorded on the night of the fatal shooting. On June 6, 2023, 4 days after the killing, Susan was placed under arrest and charged with manslaughter with a firearm, culpable negligence, simple battery, and 2 counts of simple assault. Initially, she refused to stand up to be handcuffed. As she was being escorted to a patrol vehicle, she claimed that she had chest pains and attempted to fall to the ground. On August 16, 2024, Susan Lorincz was found guilty of manslaughter. On November 25 of that same year, she received a sentence of 25 years in prison. Her scheduled release date is in April 2048, when she will be 83 years old. It is possible for Susan to be released earlier, based on good time that she could accrue. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. My original video about this case was made before Susan went on trial. In that video, I talked about how I thought she was guilty of manslaughter. After watching the Netflix documentary, my opinion remains the same. At the time of the shooting, AJ Owens was angry and clearly looking for a confrontation. However, she never attempted to make entry into Susan's residence. Susan enjoyed a reasonable degree of safety behind a locked metal door. Furthermore, she had already contacted the police. She knew they were on the way. Susan did not have the right to use lethal force under those circumstances. The reason that Susan was guilty of manslaughter and not murder is due to AJ's aggressive behavior. Item number 2, what do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Susan was self-centered, antagonistic, vindictive, petty, attention-seeking, insecure, hypersensitive, falsely believed she was special, played the victim, had a sense of entitlement, and moderately creepy. In her neighborhood, Susan was known as a bully. Seemingly, she sought every opportunity to aggravate people based on this idea that she controlled part of this field next to the apartment that she rented. According to her neighbors, Susan engaged in many different antagonizing behaviors. For example, she accused neighborhood children of trespassing. She made false claims against the children. Susan would enter her Nissan Titan pickup truck and blast the radio to annoy the children. She would activate the horn to alarm them. She used racial slurs, other derogatory language, and extended her middle finger. Susan was fixated on the idea of playing the victim. This was her go-to tactic whenever there was a dispute between her and her neighbors. Even during that incident where she allegedly hit the gate with her truck, she invoked panic and referenced a history of trauma. Susan strongly disliked AJ's children, believing they were disrespectful, belligerent, and dangerous. Her objective was to provoke AJ into a confrontation during which AJ would physically attack her. This would make Susan a genuine victim and establish that AJ was the one in the wrong. Essentially, this would be vindication for Susan. In February 2022, Susan accused AJ of striking her with a sign, but the accusation was unsupported. This was disappointing for Susan, so she continued harassing AJ's children, hoping that AJ would eventually react strongly. Susan purchased the pistol and researched the law on self-defense. This way she would be prepared in the event that she ever succeeded in provoking AJ to violence. On June 2, 2023, Susan harassed AJ's children in various ways, which attracted AJ's attention and made her angry. AJ knew that Susan was a troublemaker. She knew that Susan overreacted to every little provocation, and she knew that Susan would call the police if she went over and banged on her door. Despite all this knowledge, AJ unwisely made her way to Susan's door and banged on it aggressively. It's not clear what AJ was trying to accomplish here. This was a very unwise tactic against somebody who was begging for a chance to play the victim. In this moment, Susan finally achieved her goal. She was able to manipulate AJ and leverage AJ's anger against her. AJ walked right into the trap. Susan was now the victim. If she had done nothing but wait for the police, she could have preserved this victim status. AJ probably would have been viewed as overly aggressive by law enforcement. The problem for Susan is that she ended up overplaying her hand. When she fired a round through the door, her actions were not reasonable. This behavior did not qualify as self-defense. Now AJ was the victim. It's not clear what Susan's intent was. Maybe she was trying to kill AJ. Maybe she was just trying to frighten her. But either way, Susan knew her behavior carried a significant risk of leading to a fatality. Now moving to my final item, number 3. What do I think about the Netflix documentary, The Perfect Neighbor? This documentary told the story of Susan and AJ mostly through body camera video recorded when the police responded to Susan's neighborhood on multiple occasions. In addition, there was some video from when Susan was interrogated and from her trial, as well as some audio from when the police interviewed neighbors. I've never been a fan of documentaries that attempt to incorporate a novel theme. This is the domain of various kinds of movies, but it doesn't really fit well for a documentary, at least not in my opinion. I'm much more interested in having the complete story, and this documentary did not do a great job of filling in the blanks. For example, there should have been original interviews with neighbors conducted by the filmmakers, and a lot more background information on Susan and AJ. I'm curious about their experiences, which may have contributed to this disaster. I think this is a case where the attempt to adopt a creative style resulted in a tragic shortage of substance. There is no question that the story should be told. It contains important lessons about racism, neighborhood disputes, the misuse of self-defense claims, and many other relevant issues. This story should have been comprehensively explained instead of packaged in a strange way to achieve some type of stylistic goal. Even so, it was a decent, albeit incomplete, documentary, definitely worth watching. I think the lesson learned in this case is that when somebody is desperately trying to play the victim, it is critical not to give them any reason to believe they are achieving their goal. AJ may have believed that she was on solid footing as far as what the law permitted. Like certainly, Susan was not allowed to shoot her. After all, Susan provoked AJ by aggravating her children. What AJ didn't appreciate is that Susan did not understand self-defense law, or did not care. She was waiting for an opportunity to defend herself. It did not need to be a perfect opportunity. Rather, she was willing to take anything that came her way. Susan's goal was never to be the perfect neighbor. She wanted to be the perfect victim. Those are my thoughts on the case of Susan Lorincz. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.